Okay, so here is just a sample of kind of what a typical day in my own personal classroom looks like. And, this can be flexible depending on what we're doing. But this is a typical, second day of a unit. We already know the basics, so we're just going to be practicing it. So this is something that might happen 2-3 days a week in my classroom. So they come in, and there's already a warm-up projected on the board. This is typically something either over a mathematical concept that they're going to be using in the day's lesson. Maybe it's something they learned in the previous years, or it's something that's kind of reviewing what we learned yesterday. So a typical warm-up. I'll do a variety of these. I do them either by paper. Sometimes I will have them printed out on little quarter slips of paper, and they just grab one as they come in. Sometimes it's on a Google form if it's an electronic one. Sometimes they write it on a Post-it note and they put that on the board. Sometimes they just they rank themselves based on the previous day's learning, and they write that on a Post-it note and place that on the board so then we can kind of group accordingly. So when I say warm-up, it's a very broad term. It could mean a lot of different things, and it might not even be doing math. Like I said, it might be they come in and say, you know what, I don't remember anything we did, so I'm going to categorize myself as a low-level understanding, or whatever we call it that day. And then I can look, and as the class, I can say, okay, we need to back up and do a little bit more of this whole group instruction. Or, I could say, okay, these 8 people who are in that I'm really confused category, I'm going to take you and you're going to be in my teacher-led section for the day. So it's a really good time. I typically spend, 5-10 minutes depending on what we're doing in this category. Then we move into kind of going over the agenda. I do this every single day, even if I feel like it's repetitive. I might be telling them the same thing every day for a week. You have a test coming up next Tuesday, or your Math Excel is due on Friday. And I repeat it over and over. I point to it on the sideboard that shows where it's posted. And I also remind them, that it's on Progress Book so that there are multiple places where they can see this. And I just feel like the more that I repeat it, the more likely it is to stick. And then I also kind of say, okay, here's what our plan is for the day. This is what's going on for the week or the unit or the month. But now today, here are our goals. And I like to have that projected as well so that students can visually see it. And I've even in the past given checklists, this is our goal for the entire week. You work at your own pace, and that's going to lead into kind of category 3. But that little checklist is kind of like the agenda. As you move through this throughout the week, you check it off. And then the agenda for the day would be everybody should be on number 3 today. And by Wednesday, we all should be through number 6 or something like that. The last thing, or the third thing I should say, is we will then kind of split up into our sections of the room. And this varies every single day, but I typically will stay up front or maybe in the back or even sometimes in the center. It depends kind of on where the majority of the students are sitting that need my attention, and I will lead them through even more in-depth problems, and we will go through them. Typically these groups are 5, 6, 7 people, so they can really get their questions asked. They sit close to me. I'm sitting with them, so I'm not staying in front of the board lecturing. It seems a lot more informal, but they really take a lot out of that. And then I have always students who just want to learn it on their own, and so they'll watch me in the videos that I've created similar to this, but with the math. They'll go through the notes, and to them, they don't need me to stand up there for 40 minutes and to talk, and they can pick up on things extremely quick. And then usually I will also have a third group who wants to just take the work and see if they can do it, and if they can't, then they backtrack. And I usually have a good list of places they can go to get help, and 1 being come see me, 2 being come see the notes, 3, just Google it. I'm trying to instill with them these skills that will carry over. I don't necessarily care whether or not they learn how to do partial fraction decomposition. I mean, they're not going to need that, most of them. But what I'm concerned with is, can you use your outside resources, figure out what you need to solve the problem you've been given? And, that's a real-life skill that we're working with. And then lastly, for my daily routine or procedures, is we reconvene as a whole, and typically I repeat some of the things that I've said in number 2, just to drill it into their head. This is due this day, test this day, quiz this day, this is your homework, this is where you can find resources. Did we learn A, B, and C that was on our goals or objectives for the day? And it just kind of wraps it up, brings everybody back together, because there are so many different working parts going on in the classroom. When I let the students kind of pick how they want to learn, this is very important to make sure that they did learn what I intended them to learn.